All right. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Not sure what time zone everybody is in. We're going to give people just a couple more minutes to join in here. We'll probably start at about 2 to 3 minutes after the hour. So anybody who wants to quickly run to the bathroom, grab another coffee, a snack, we will be here waiting, but we'll give everybody another minute or two.
Maybe in the meantime, they can drop um, in a quick note where they're tuning in from. That will be interesting. So we can assume the time zone.
I love that. In the hotel world, it's you never really know. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning for some of our friends. It's 9 a.m. for me.
It's almost day over here in Germany, so it's already 3 p.m. here, which is nice. So a couple more hours and we're done for the day, and it's already Wednesday, so it's really cool.
Love it. It's a good reminder, Julia. So we do have the chat open, which we'll talk about in a minute. You guys can drop your questions into that. You can chat us. You can I don't know if you can chat the whole audience, but we will see if that function is turned on. But feel free to drop in questions, comments, emojis when we say something ridiculous, whatever it is, throughout the webinar. So please do use the Q&A function. We will definitely have some time towards the end to look through all of that and answer some of those questions. Ton of people joining. We'll give everybody one more minute and then I will kick us off. All right. I'm going to dive in. Our stragglers will just miss my little intro, but they won't miss much. So, welcome everybody to How Smart Hotels Automate the Guest Journey. I am Brett Robbins. I'm the CEO of Snapfix, and today we're here to talk about how the guest journey is changing. So, to kick things off before I get into the actual meat of today, couple logistical items for everybody. First, the webinar today is being recorded. So if that scares you, don't say anything silly. Just kidding. I don't think anyone on the listening side can actually jump in, but that's a note for Julia and Adam, who have a tendency to say pretty ridiculous things on camera, and we will edit it all out later. But we will also send you all a copy of this recording afterwards so you can share it with your team members and look back on it. As I mentioned earlier, we have the Q&A function open, so you can navigate to the bottom of your screen, click on chat, and any questions that you have throughout the webinar, feel free to post those. We will have 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A, depending on how well we manage time towards the end of today's webinar, and we will answer those. If we don't get to any of your questions, we will absolutely send a follow-up afterwards as well with an answer to those. And we also are going to have a short little poll at the very end of the webinar. So look out for that. Listen, then we're going to ask you just one question about your own operations, your own hotel, and we would love for you all to answer that so we can learn a little bit more about you. I can see that some people are popping into the chat now telling us that they are from Minnesota, Italy, Greece. So, as expected, we are engaging the global audience that is hoteliers, and we welcome you, and we're excited that you guys are here. We've got Ireland, England. I wonder if we have any APAC on, so we'll see if anyone from there lets us know. So, with that, I just want to give everybody a quick intro here of why we're having this discussion here today. So, I want to think back for a minute and take you guys all to about a year ago this time. I was at a conference and there was a bunch of different panels on AI at this conference. And what was very clear to me last summer or last early fall was people were talking about AI. No one was scared of it anymore. There was a sort of general calm in the room that AI was coming, it was happening. But the conversation at the conference about a year ago was still that AI is coming. These are some things that you might want to think about. These are some strategies that could be beneficial to you. Here are some things that really crazy tech companies coming out of, California and New York are talking about. But AI really wasn't a part of the general framework for how hotels were doing business. We now fast forward about a year, and what I'm hearing from hotels and what we are seeing at conferences is that people are talking about AI point solutions. Here's something really cool that we did to use data differently here. Here's one way that we're thinking about how AI could help inform this part of our booking process or this email that we're sending out. And so hotels are definitely warming up to the process, but most of the people that we're talking to are still thinking about data and AI in ways that are really discrete. And I think what I want everyone to walk away from this webinar today is to realize that the way that we use AI, the way that we use data, and the way that we can engage with our customers does not need to be a point solution. It is not a discrete solution. We have the opportunity today with technologies today from the very beginning of the process, the moment a customer is beginning to think about a vacation or a trip or a work travel or whatever it is that they need to do, all the way through to the time when they might be leaving a review and thinking about the next great trip that they're going to take, that we can engage that customer in completely different ways today. We have ways to surprise and delight that customer that are fundamentally different due to the use of data and the use of technology. And we've brought together some amazing people today. Obviously, I'm biased on the Snapfix side, but we have Julia from Bookboost. We've got Adam from MARA. And I'm really excited for us to talk about how data and technology is completely changing the guest journey for our customers today. So that's what we're here to talk about. With that, I'm going to allow Julia and Adam to introduce themselves. But before they do, we're going to kick off with one of my favorite questions. And I don't know that Julia and Adam even know that this question is coming, so we will see how this lands. But I'd like each of you to describe your company, what you do, Bookboost and Mara, as if you were talking to a 5-year-old. And I'm going to go first just to set the tone, let you guys know how this works. So as you can imagine here, we are not allowed to use buzzwords in any way when talking to a 5-year-old. They wouldn't know what those buzzwords are unless it was something that Miss Rachel or Sesame Street was saying. So I have a 6-year-old, so I want you to try to think about that as you describe your company. So really quick on Snapfix. So if I were talking to my 6-year-old daughter, I would tell her, I want you to imagine for a minute that you are in the bathtub, and it's bath time when we're getting ready for bed. And you're making one of your favorite potions, and you're mixing things up, and you go to reach for the blue soap, and you realize that there's no more blue soap. And how are you possibly going to make a blue potion without any blue soap tonight? So you start screaming for mom and dad at the top of your lungs. And you're not angry, you're just trying to get her attention, but mom and dad aren't in the room at the moment. So you think to yourself, okay, well, I'm big enough. I can get out of the tub. I'll just get out of the tub. I'll grab my towel, and I'll go ask mom and dad for the blue soap. Well, I go to reach for the towel, and there's no towels there either. So now I'm sitting in the bathtub. I'm soaking wet. There's no towels. There's no blue soap, and I don't know what to do. And so what Snapfix does in a hotel environment is we make sure that if you were taking that same bath at your favorite hotel, that your favorite blue soap would be there, that the room would be stocked with all the right number of towels for the right number of guests, and that everything related to your experience there is going to be ready before you get into the room. And that is what perfect operations looks like. And that is what is possible when we use an operations platform inside of our hotel. I will stop talking. Over to Julia. Thank you for clapping. Hopefully, I didn't use any buzzwords there.
Well done, well done. This is really cool. Yeah, meanwhile, I had a little bit of time, and I think I'm the only one in this panel without children, so it's a little bit tricky for me. But I was an au pair in the US way, way long time ago, 20 years, I think. And so I know a little bit about play dates and how to arrange them. And so imagine that your friend comes over for a play date and you know already in advance what kind of games they like to play and what kind of snacks they need and that they need a snack before 4 p.m. Otherwise, they get cranky. So you know that in advance and you prepare it. And so you have a perfect play date with your friend. And now imagine you have play dates every day with a different friend, and everyone has different preferences and wants to play with different things and likes different snacks. So remembering that is quite hard. So Bookboost is helping you with exactly that, remembering everything about your friends coming over, sending them birthday messages when their birthday comes up or before they arrive, that you're super happy that they're coming over. So this is a little bit how Bookboost works.
Perfect job. No buzzwords.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great story, Julia. And also, what an intro as well, Brett. You got me really fired up for a webinar, I think, for the first time with that introduction. Yeah, really interesting question, actually. I have a 4-year-old daughter, right? So I tried to think of something in the meantime that was going to be reflective of maybe an experience I had. And it's also kind of food related, Julia, as well, because if I was explaining it to my daughter Ivy, I would probably say something like, you know how when daddy cooks you a dinner and he has carrots or broccoli in that dinner and you don't like it, not necessarily the broccoli, but maybe the way that daddy cooked it. Maybe it was too soft or too hard, for example. And you tell daddy, right, that you don't like it. And I responded to you and I say, okay, I understand you didn't like it. And maybe next time, based on what you told me, I will try to cook it a bit differently. Maybe I can put it in a soup. Maybe I can put it in a bolognese or something like this and try to learn from what you've told me. And yeah, like you said as well, Brett, to bring it back to the hospitality section, I think that's basically it, replying to what guests tell you and actually letting that change the experience next time.
I love that. Who knew you were such a great cook, Adam?
According to my daughter, I'm not.
Very good.
Well, at least she has a place to leave the feedback. All right. So with that, we're going to dive in. You will hear now about the actual guest journey. So I want to take you guys to the very, very start of the process for a minute. So this is long before the guest shows up at your doors, long before they're standing in front of reception. This is happening, when they are planning for their journey. They are thinking about, where they're going to stay. They're comparing you to other properties and trying to make a decision. And I'd love to kick off as we think about, pre-arrival and first contact. Actually, even earlier than that, Adam, you had some really interesting data that I know that you pulled out, looking at the relationship between reviews and what happens early in the journey. And so would love for you to share that with the group.
Yes, of course. So, as I mentioned, Mara works with reputation management and reviews as well. And I think what's really important is last year I worked on a report that was analyzing 1 million guest reviews across the DACH region, basically looking for what really drives sentiment and positive and negative reviews. And 2 of the 5 biggest drivers actually of negative sentiment in this particular report I co-authored were check-in delays and lack of digital pre-arrival communication, right? And just as a very quick note from my side is that I think it's really important to say that you may not think about it, but actually even tiny things that happen at the very beginning of the guest journey can actually show up in reviews at the very end of the guest journey. And so you really need to be, I suppose, analyzing what guests have said previously and carry that into this pre-arrival phase of the next guest. And that stood out to me, actually, to be honest, in that report. So thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think we often think about the guest journey as being these like very specific moments, right? They do discovery, and now they're doing discovery more often in things like Claude and ChatGPT or Gemini. Then they show up, and we're really focused on, did we deliver the lobby experience and the check-in experience that they expected? Was the room ready? And all of these things are really important, but it is much more connected than that. And the guest is having this actual life experience, right? They are having a vacation, they're going on a work trip, whatever it is. They're going to see a friend. And every single one of these moments feeds into this overarching picture and experience that they're going to build, and this feedback that they're going to have on you. And so, I mean, Julie, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about it, but I think that for a really long time, Guest 360 or like the guest profile was just sort of a series of really specific things as opposed to something that is much broader and bigger about who that guest is.
Yeah, I mean, for most hotels, the guest profile, also from my days back in hospitality, was basically the guest name, the email address, potentially having 3, 5, 10, 20 profiles of the same guest with different numbers, with different rates. And that was everything I knew about the guest, right? I knew that they're a returning guest if I'm from reception and I've seen this guest many, many times, but it's set in the brain of my employee and not in a database. So now this is very, very different because we have platforms that collect all this in one and really collect 360-degree view of the guest. So I know that this guest stayed once and booked through booking.com, and the next time direct, and the next time through an agency, and they come sometimes with a company, and sometimes they are privately there, and sometimes they come with a family, and so on and so forth. And this obviously helps to create these beautiful, a bit more, not only a bit more, but way richer experiences for pre-arrival and during the stay and after, and so on and so forth. And that kind of leads into way better reviews at the end. But that's something we're going to discuss a little bit further. But yeah, I think from where we come from where we are now, it's so much nicer to have, but you need to know which systems you want to have the source of truth to create really those experiences from the beginning the stay in and to post stay, etc. So it needs to sit somewhere, and we need to understand where and what and how and so on and so forth. So it's really right there. Yeah, it's just need to be collected.
Yeah. I love calling out this idea of the individual data that we used to collect on a guest back in your hotelier days, right? How many stays they had done, the types of stays that they might have done with you. Maybe we had some other information on some things that maybe they bought during their stay, and that could have led to some upsell. But I think about a lot of these things as being very traditional loyalty. And I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I still feel like the loyalty programs of today, and I travel a ton and I'm a member of all of the major brand loyalty ones and lots of other smaller ones, and I love points and miles. I feel like they really miss the mark in a lot of ways because they're not really trying to think about this customer more holistically and give the team member ways to engage or use technology in ways to engage that are actually differentiated, but totally possible today with all the information that we have on them.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. I think there is a great example that I made a presentation 2 years back. It was on how we can actually make this data better. And there was this great example by, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but if you go to Disney in the US, and they have some of the parks, they do have this bracelets, and they collect all the data about you and where you eat and when you eat there and all of this, and they really make an experience like what is your favorite Disney princess and all of this, and that makes it really, really an experience at the end for you as well as for your kids. Or I mean, I'm not a kid. I love to go to Disney and love to have this experience. So I think that is amazing because that only is, so they will collect the data beforehand, they will collect the data for the next day, and they will collect it for during the experience in the hotel. So I really love that, and I think that fits quite well into that comment that you just made.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that. All right, well, before we get to the next section as we move into the stay, I think I want to highlight maybe one of my biggest pet peeves here in the sort of early check-in, first arrival process, which is, one of the things that we see hoteliers doing really, really well today is asking the customer questions. they will send a pre-arrival note. They will send a preference, survey that they can fill out. And I think that's really great, right? That's showing that you care, and it's the first step in the process. And I know, Julia, as you and I have talked about this, it's like, there's so many things we can do to engage the customer in the pre-arrival process, but these are some of the minimum things that we should do. So if we collect all that information and we take the time to get that information into our PMS, and we know that they're showing up with their children, and we know that they need a crib in the room or an extra cot in the room, and we have this information on what time they're going to show up, why can't we then take that information and coordinate what actually happens when they show up, right? Why is the room still only set up as a standard double room, even though we have them blocked into room 304? And why are we then, jumping on our walkie-talkie and calling the housekeeping admin and asking that person to see if they can get someone over to that room to set it up and rush it really quickly, which is the least efficient way to use our resources on site. And so I think about this, and I think what I want to start to jump into now as we move into the stay is, what are all the ways that we can actually use data, use the information that we have to get ahead of our guest? How do we understand what to expect from them so that we are able to not just surprise and delight them, but really just deliver on expectations, which will lead to a really positive review at the end of the process? How do we use the data that they're very freely giving us to create experiences that are what they expect and are truly exceptional? And I think there's so many opportunities in the actual stay process to do this. So we can use that PMS as a jumping off point into moving into our actual stay. One of the things that maybe I want to highlight here, and Adam, feel free to jump in here, but as people are searching for hotels, we've now taken early stay, but we're into our actual stay. As people are searching for a hotel, one of the things that we found now is that they're doing this more and more on Gemini, on Claude, on ChatGPT. So it's a really important part of our process. Well, the number one thing that feeds into those platforms is actual consumer generated content, right? It is the reviews. So in order to get customers to our hotel, we've got to deliver on really great experiences. And I'm curious how, you guys have thought about that. How can the hotelier, the modern hotelier of today, really use the review to change the on-site experience so they get what they need to, they say what they need to say, customers are saying it, and that ultimately leads to more customers wanting to come in and book?
Yeah, so I think that if we're transitioning from, let's say, the pre-arrival into the during stay, obviously when you speak about a review specifically, it's happening, post-stay in many cases, but I feel that there's a lot of aspects happening during stay that you still need to be aware of and still need to collect in terms of data, right? So what we actually do with MARA, I think that's really relevant, is you can create during stay surveys, right? That can be sent out with a link via your communications tool that you're using, right? And I think that what's important to mention here is, and I think it's a good opportunity, is that we have a very specific integration with Snapfix, which means that if a guest mentions an issue, an operational or maintenance issue during the stay, that could potentially be something like, let's say, a faulty AC or a broken TV remote, for example, this will automatically be detected by MARA. And if you're using a PMS system that you're integrated with, we can take the room number, the reservation ID, and send that as a ticket into Snapfix to be resolved on site during stay. And just to wrap that back around to your point, Brett, around how that affects your review, you would absolutely rather that a guest leaves a review at the end of the stay that says, I had a problem, but the staff identified it quickly and fixed it, rather than I reported a problem on day one and it was never resolved, right? And so I think that's really key part of this automation topic for today is you don't want somebody looking every day at surveys and trying to identify, is this an issue that needs to go to maintenance? Is this an issue that needs to go to housekeeping? We automate that process for you together with Snapfix and your PMS integration. And this is a really key topic, I think, in terms of how you can utilize a reservation or a reputation management tool during stay.
Yeah, it's an amazing example. Thanks for the Snapfix shout out. Of course, we love when our customers are using the tools together and actually engaging in real time to fix things. But I think what you're calling out is something that is much broader than just a MARA and Snapfix integration. It's thinking about the guest journey in terms of this data layer. So the way that the guest is engaging, the way that the guest is producing data and sharing their data with you, if we don't have ways to automatically read that data, internalize that data, and then make sense of that data for our team members, it's never going to become something that is part of an individual guest's stay. We might look back on something over the course of months and say, huh, we are getting a lot of complaints about our TVs not working or our Wi-Fi dropping. Maybe we should create a CapEx project to put some better Wi-Fi into the building, and we'll do that next year. And so now we're, year plus down the path, and unfortunately, we have heard this from large management companies and hoteliers that they look at these things and they say, oh, we'll get to that, right? I mean, we do see that in our data now. And I think what the best hotels are doing now is they're able to actually extract those insights in real time from their data layer. They're then able to create and coordinate actions associated with that. Not everything can be fixed same day. You can't fix all your Wi-Fi switches in an afternoon. It might be too expensive. It might just not be feasible. But the small things are things that we definitely can react to. But it's all about engaging with that guest and figuring out how we can take all of those great insights in an automated way and turn them into operational action. Julia, I'm curious, on your side of things, when you think about the communication side of that, how are teams actually engaging with the guest differently during the stay? What are you seeing that's really bending the curve and, changing that experience?
I wouldn't say it's bending the curve, but I think it's something that guests expect now is depending on the generation, depending on the guest, depending on, how tech savvy they are, they want different communication channels to be open for them to communicate their needs, their review, their whatever. So it can't be just an email to send out because nobody wants the email or the phone, the dusty phone somewhere in the corner of the room where you need to call reception. I would like to send just like a quick chat or a quick WhatsApp or a text message, whatever, to reception saying, hey, I want to iron my shirt and I don't find an iron board here. Can you bring me one up? So I think it really depends. So I think this is something that is super, super important nowadays, that you need to have different channels available for different people. They're probably another generation that still loves to grab the dusty phone and call the reception, not me. And so I think this is definitely something that needs to be taken into account when you decide to, okay, how can I make this process smoother? How can I make my customers and my guests give them the opportunity to share things with me and to understand this. And then obviously this kind of feedback needs to be fed in a system to understand, okay, this guest actually told me that she needs always an ironing board because she's here for business. And so I prepare that in advance. So it needs to be somewhere, right? It needs to sit somewhere. And so this is where systems like a CDP, for example, customer data platform, is super, super important because the PMS shouldn't be that kind of system where this data sits. It should be somewhere totally different where it's really customed to the guest profile to make it really usable for all the other systems like MARA, like Snapfix, and so on and so forth, to really distribute that information to the right platform.
Yeah, just to jump on that last thing, maybe it's not that the PMS shouldn't be a system to have this data. It's that the PMS is not the system that houses all this data today. And I think that is the problem, is that hotels are looking at their PMS in a lot of ways, and it has your booking data in it. It has the number of stays. It has the normal, vintage data that we collected on a customer when we thought about loyalty in more traditional ways. I know there's really smart people thinking about this problem of what is loyalty in today's, world and with today's technology. But the reality is, one thing is super clear. There's much more data that is available on this customer and that communicates their preferences, communicates their needs, and we can use that data, but we can't just look to our PMS because we are looking at such a small portion, a sliver of that guest profile and what that guest is looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree.
All right, let's shift into a little bit later in the journey. So I want to get to closer to the end of a stay, thinking about a guest has been there for 50% of their stay, a day or two, things like that. How can we start to learn more from our guest during their stay? We know that like surveys are something that, people use often, that we're seeing them, come out post stay, and it's helpful. We learn, what happened on that stay. But what are some other ways that we can actually think about engaging with this guest, very specifically later in their stay, trying to change that experience, or change the experience for the next guest?
Yeah.
I'll let you jump on that one, Julia.
Yeah, I think it's obviously quite important to share everything bad or good with the hotel so the hotel can learn. But obviously it's also a hurdle, right? If I have a good experience, my willingness to share that feedback will be quite low. If I have an exceptional experience that will change again, then I would rather share this if there's an employee and so on and so forth. But then again, the data needs to sit somewhere. The data needs to be usable. So if I share, it needs to come from the review system into the guest profile. It needs to sit there so I understand for communication purposes, for loyalty purposes, for the next reservation, whatever comes in. I need to understand from a human perspective, but also from an AI perspective, right? If the data sits somewhere and the AI can read it, I can really then personalize the next communication that I send to the guest. And so I think that is something post stay, where again it needs to come from somewhere into somewhere to make it usable and activate a whole new experience for the guests in the future.
I love that. I will say, like, if I were a hotelier, which I'm not, I'm just someone who's spent, hundreds and hundreds of nights in hotels over the course of, my career and my life. But if I were a hotelier, I think one of the things that I might be feeling right now is, this all sounds great, but it sounds like I need a whole lot of systems that are set up and, gathering data from here, thinking about data here, telling my team member to do something different here. How do I manage that from a training standpoint? How do I manage that from an accountability standpoint? How do I even know that I'm looking at the right data? And so I can imagine there's a little bit of this feeling of this feels like a really big departure from where we might be today, in terms of how we're engaging with the guest. And I think that's an okay feeling. I'll just say that, which is that, we should feel a little bit uncomfortable in the hotel space. We should recognize and acknowledge that the experience that a lot of customers are having in other parts of their life are different than the experience when they show up at a hotel. I'll give a super simple example. I think, post-COVID, we all have really, great Wi-Fi systems at home. And I would imagine that people who are working from home, like myself today, you've got, a really great office set up. You don't have a dusty phone in the corner anymore, because this is like a place where you spend a lot of time. But a lot of times when we show up at a hotel, we feel like we're like ported back into the 2000s. It's like Backstreet Boys is playing. You're wearing, white and silver. Who knows? Your hair has got frosted tips on it. But we are. Thank you, Julia. You couldn't have set it up more perfect. But it's like this experience on site just feels a little bit different. And I think that our customer is very patient with us. And I don't think that they're expecting that, tomorrow the hotel has, robots moving between floors and cleaning rooms. And I don't even think that's what they want. What they want is, genuine, fantastic human interaction and hospitality to be delivered. But they want those things to be a little bit more thoughtful. And so I think my recommendation here would be to try to think about some of these parts of the journey, some of the parts of your operation. Where can you start to dip your toe in the water a little bit more deeply of, okay, we could do a mid-stay survey, and we could make sure that that survey is specifically leading to changes that we make for guests. That's a piece of our operation that we think is lacking, and we could focus there. Or we could think about, and we're moving to post-stay in a minute, how we're going to use those reviews more effectively. We're going to make sure that those reviews are actually connected into our system and are driving our process changes and our, initiatives each quarter so that we're actually using the data that they're very freely giving us and turning it into changes that we make. So if you feel a little overwhelmed, I just want you to know that that's okay. I think most hoteliers are feeling that way, but there's ways to start to engage with this. So with that, let's jump to post-stay because I want to make sure we've got enough time for questions. There's been a lot of questions that have come in, and time for our quick poll at the end. So going into our post-stay, so our guest is checking out. Hopefully, he or she and family have had an absolutely wonderful experience. Nothing went wrong. Everything was perfect. And I think that a lot of people sort of see this as, okay, that was the end of it. We did it. They were here for 4 days. The room was made every single day. They didn't tell us anything negative so far. I think this went great. Payment got processed. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. and Mrs., and we will see you later. And I think that this is the moment where hotels really need to lean in. And so, Adam, I'm going to toss it over to you first here on post stay. This is obviously where Mara, is shining the most. But talk to us
Yes.
a little bit about, what's happening at that point in time. What are the best hotels doing and thinking about to really, improve their operation?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brett. So you touched on a point that actually sets me off, which is this concept of everybody thinks when a review is left and replied to, this is the end of the journey, right? Good luck and thanks. Thank you so much for your stay. Don't need to think about it again. And I feel especially with reputation management in the last few years, it's moved beyond just replying to reviews, right? It's still a core pillar. Don't get me wrong. You still have to reply to reviews, of course, but it's not the only pillar I think that exists. And when we try to ground this in automation, the core topic of the webinar here, there's lots of things you can do nowadays to actually automate aspects of that reputation process. And I've 3 ideas I kind of prepared I'd talk about quickly is responding, right? So this review topic, what you see a lot of hoteliers that I speak with when I'm doing case studies, what they do is they'll automate responses to 4 and 5 star reviews, right? Using their brand voice. So somebody doesn't always have to respond deeply to a review that says, wow, great stay. It doesn't have to be so deep when you respond to that. So if you have 4 or 5 star reviews that don't have too much depth, you can automate this process using your own brand voice, right? And I think anything lower than that, what I see some hotel groups doing is then, 3 stars. Okay, let's address it. Let's look at why this was a specific complaint. I think the second thing is also around analysis, right? So automating the process of reporting. And I think you talked about this a little bit earlier as well, which is the concept of there's so much data there, especially if you've got like an international hotel group, you're getting thousands and thousands and thousands of reviews that it's just not realistic that somebody can actually put in the time to look at this and generate reports and send it to the operations leader or to the general manager of each hotel. And so you can also automate this process to ensure that the reviews are looked at scale and ship it off to the right team. And then I think what we're all kind of aligned on in terms of the 3 of us in this webinar is actually sharing that information and automating different tools to take action across the guest journey, right? And this is actually my favorite of all of them because I love when you meet other solutions like Snapfix, for example, or Bookboost, and something is triggered in Mara or another solution that actually creates an action in, let's say, another best-in-class solution you're working with. And I feel that this for me goes right back to the beginning of the conversation, which was around looking at the pre-arrival topic and looking at guest profiles and stuff like this. How do we make it better for the next guest? It's about once you've done your applying, once you've created your reports and identified the issues, that you then ship this back to the relevant tool and team afterwards. And I think that is one of my favorite developments in recent years is the power of integrations. And I think that that's a really, really key point at the end as well. Like, as we said, closing that loop, right? To make sure that the guest journey, what you learn from this particular journey will improve the next one.
Yeah. There are two really interesting things that you're highlighting here, and then I'll toss it over to Julia for a second here. But I think the first one is that guest piece of feedback is not just related to that guest. And if we treat it that way and all we are doing is responding to it, we are really letting down all of our other guests, our current ones that are in-house, our future ones. And so it is so important that we think about how we are using all of this data to get better every single day, to change how we operate, the processes that we have in place, the way that we choose to engage. If we don't do that, we ultimately will be left behind. And I think the other piece here that you're really making here is like this data is too big for an individual or a team of people to manage. Like it just is not possible if we want to, really evolve with what technology can do today. And that's where these types of technologies, and Julie, I'd love for you to talk about it a little bit, really come in to start to absorb that information, really think about how we're going to customize, how we're going to personalize, and how we can actually do that at scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I mentioned before, this data needs to sit somewhere, and we need to learn from that data and make every state better. And if we have guest profiles where we collect data from Mara, data from Snapface, data from the PMS, data from the spa, data from the table booking, and so on and so forth, it all connected, really, really, truly connected, and the data flows back and forth between all these systems, then we truly can create those specific moments for specific guests and make it on one side automated and special and on the other side specialized to that guest, and then also give it the human touch, because we have still we want this, right? We want it all to be connected. We expect to be connected like our life, our regular life, but then also to make it to make it feel special to me, right? So with the Disney example, it's the same thing, right? They collect data at big scale, but then they make it very special to my needs and to my preferences, and so on and so forth. So it kind of is the whole circle, right? What Adam said, like you start the whole guest journey circle all over. When the review is left, this is where another guest journey starts, and it goes round and round and round, and it all needs to be connected and highlighted. And I need to understand from, as I said, from an AI perspective, but also from a human perspective, this is all there. I just need to look at it on the bird's view and understand. Okay, who is this guest actually? Who's Adam? Who's Brad? Who's Julia? And what can I do to make their stay better? And Julia prefers this, and Brad prefers this, and Adam prefers this, and they use different channels to communicate, and they use different channels to book, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of my peace of mind to your
Yeah.
point.
It's right back to your point at the beginning, which is if you have all those friends coming over for sleepovers and it's different friends every single night, it's really hard to keep track of all that. Before we jump into some of the Q&A and our quick poll for you all, I just want to talk a little bit about the very last piece of this, which is, we've talked a lot about all this data that we are collecting, these opportunities where these customers are sharing with us. Let's not forget that nothing changes if we don't help our team members on the ground do something different. So our front desk agent is only as good as the training and tasks that are being created for that person. Our housekeeping team is only as good as their ability to have the data and see the boards and be able to work the rooms in the right order at the right point in time. And so, all of this interesting data, it has to be analyzed. It has to be set up in the right ways, and then it has to be sent to systems that can actually coordinate everything that happens day to day. That this is, unfortunately, I would say in some ways, this is not just a luxury problem anymore, right? The best hotels, the most expensive hotels in the world, surprising and delighting people. This is about just very basic expectations. If I've told you that I need the crib in the room, if I've told you that I want to be away from the elevator, if I've told you that I'm celebrating something special, I kind of am expecting something different to happen. So if we're going to take the time to ask our guests, what they want, and we're going to take the time to create the right profiles, and we've got the right systems in place to analyze that, we need to make sure that we've got the system that coordinates the downstream operational work, and uses all that great information so that the day-to-day can actually feel different, both for your employees as well as for your guests. It's hard, but what is really cool about this is, available today. It is not science fiction. This is not people talking about point solution AI. This is we're getting closer and closer to the world of really true agentic AI, of the ability to really understand everything that's happening and to create a unique experience. So with that, we're going to jump into Q&A in just a minute. I'd like to launch a poll for everybody. It'll be very, very quick. We will gather your feedback. So hopefully that will pop up on your screen here in just a second. Awesome. All right. So it's just one question, just so everybody knows. We're not going to make you do the SATs here for the Americans on the call, and something else for our international friends. Where do you think the guest journey could use the most improvement at your hotel? I'm not sure if you can choose one or multiple, but go ahead and choose, and then I'll talk through these, or maybe Adam and Julia, as you guys are looking down the list, if you've got a funny story about any of these, feel free to chime in as our listeners share their feedback.
Let's see.
I think my favorite answer here is we've got full visibility across all of it already. So whoever chooses that one, and go ahead, be bold. I just want you to know that you will actually get a personal email from me, very likely today, because I would like to sit down and talk to you. We can probably learn a lot about our product and our product roadmap from you. So if you choose that one, know that unfortunately you've just signed up for a Q&A one-on-one session with me.
Okay. I actually have also when I visited a hotel in Switzerland at the beginning of the year, and it seemed to be super modern and had I knew their PMS system, which is also one of the big new ones, and so I expected like a full automated journey, and I knew that this hotel doesn't have a reception, so I was expecting like, okay, I get my key there and I get all the information. And I received one email that was the confirmation email, and then another email before stay. And I didn't see that email because my inbox is quite full. I never see like other emails after the confirmation because I wait for the confirmation. I just sit there and wait until the confirmation arrives, so I know that everything is where it needs to be. And it was raining, it was dark, I was tired from traveling, and I stand in front of the door and couldn't open the door. And yeah, I had to call. I had to call a number. I was talking to a computer. I was soaking wet, and then they gave me the pin to the door, and then I only could check in. And if I would have gotten, for example, a WhatsApp message, which I see then on my phone, that probably could have been a better experience, because then I was really upset. I was wet, I was tired, it was cold, it was January in Switzerland. So that was not a good experience that I had. Yeah.
If that hotelier is on, I'm sure they are kicking themselves right now. So appreciate you sharing that. All right, maybe we will very quickly pop up some of the responses that we have received to the poll here. Thank you guys for chiming in. And it's interesting. It's a reasonably even split. I can see that nobody wants to have a personal one-on-one meeting with me. So thank you all. Although I might still reach out to you anyway. But I love this. It's interesting. It's like sort of across the whole ecosystem of the guest experience that people feel like there's still a lot of challenges out there, which is I think what we kicked off at the beginning saying, which is in a lot of ways, hotels are still a little bit behind on understanding how and where we can implement these types of solutions. And there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. We don't have to do everything on day one. We can pick parts of our operation, but we should think about it a little bit more broadly than solving a single pain point. I mean, the systems are much greater and much bigger than that. So
can I just add a point on
yeah.
that? Just because one stood out to me, which is 23% of people said, I need to improve across the entire guest journey. And that's really interesting because any group level like GM or group operations leader I speak with, no matter how good the quality of their service is, they're always saying, we're still looking for ways to improve. We're still looking for ways to improve constantly. And I think that, in my personal opinion, the best hotels I've spoken to are ones that, even if they're getting 5-star reviews across the board, they're still saying, what can we improve? So I think that's an awesome approach. People who say we need to improve across the entire journey.
Totally agree. Kudos to those of you who selected that. Okay, as we move into Q&A here, maybe we could just a 15-second, I wish I had a buzzer. Julia, one takeaway from today's conversation. Adam, if you want to share one other takeaway, you can as well. Although I think that was a pretty good one to share there too.
Definitely. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that obviously, I think you mentioned it, Brett. You have so many different systems that are out there, also good ones. You need to check for connectivity, right? You need to check what data flows in which way and how can you use that data. So I think that's my biggest takeaway.
Awesome. I'll share for me. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that there are so many parts of the journey that impact how the guest is actually going to experience you. And so we need to be thinking about not just these individual little moments, but all of the little moments that are happening in between and how we can organize and coordinate that so we paint a more complete picture of our guest and their experience, and therefore how we can show up as hoteliers to create a great experience. Adam, you want to add anything else before we jump to Q&A?
I'm happy. I'm happy to be part of the conversation, guys. Thanks a million.
All right, love it. Okay, we recognize that we're probably already 5 minutes past our originally allotted time here, so we appreciate you guys staying on, but we will start to answer some of the questions that have come in. If the I'm waiting for some of them to pop into my chat here. There we go. Sorry, guys, we've got a bunch. They're all being organized on the back end. So, all right. So, first one here, a year from now, what's different for a hotel that has gotten this right versus one that hasn't? Who wants to take it?
I think from my perspective, the biggest aspect is that there's way less manual work for team members inside a hotel. Going back to some of the things we spoke about, manually replying to reviews, identifying, issues to send to Snapfix, for example, manually, all of this work would be gone if somebody has the right tech stack integrations that send the right message to the right people. So you have way more time to focus on what really matters, which is basically, focusing on your guests and being hospitable. That would be the biggest change for me.
I think
Cool.
I think for me, I think this is also going into Mara's direction. I think that it will show in the reviews, right? If you're not prepared to offer everything the guests need nowadays, like different channels to good communicate, different ways of checking in, different ways of doing things in your hotel, then you're gonna feel it in the reviews. Yeah, people will definitely, as Adam said in the beginning, from his review that he made from how many hotels? I don't even remember many. That's where their complaints come up from.
Yeah. I'll add one more that's not related to our guest for a minute, but I want to talk a bit about our employees as well. So I think that your amazing frontline leaders are going to feel this difference as well. They're going to feel like they have more time to actually spend thinking about the guest and what's going on, and spending a lot less time chasing items or doing admin work or putting together reports. So more information is available to them. The information is summarized in better ways. That leads to a much higher level of job satisfaction and happiness. So I think that's a big change that you'll experience on your staff side as well. So I'm going to keep going with a lot of questions in here, then I'll flowing in a way for me to read them to you guys. We'll probably have time for maybe two more, but I'll go through these as quickly as I can, and we'll see what we get to. For an operator with lots of sites around the world, does the pre-arrival, during stay, and post-stay loop reset at every single property, or can it work as one continuous journey across the whole property? I
Um,
think it depends.
yeah, I think to answer that, it can vary from every hotel, but it can be also quite similar to each other. I don't think copy paste for every hotel is the answer here, but it can be similar, and it has to fit, right? Because even the destinations vary, the hotels vary, the size vary, the people, the guests are staying with you vary. So it also has to kind of mirror your entire guest journey in that sense as well. So you can kind of look into, okay, I will use the same templates. I will use more or less the same language, right? The brand language, but it needs to, in my opinion, it needs to vary from property to property, what you offer and what can be done, because one hotel maybe has a restaurant, the next hotel doesn't, the next one has a spa, the next one doesn't. So all these things need to be take into consideration when you create your guest journey, right? Also through
Yeah.
a group.
I would add to it, I think that the infrastructure is the same. across your entire portfolio. And I think that that's, when I think about some really interesting and complex and unique scenarios like, properties that are resort oriented, or ones that maybe have amusement and attraction, built into them. It's like the infrastructure can all be the same. The way that we implement and execute that on the ground is going to be different, and it should reflect your individual operations. But that's the sort of easy part in a lot of ways. Like once we're capturing the data and we're helping our systems understand what we should be doing, sending the right pings, the right surveys, having the right, corrective actions moving into place. In a lot of ways, that's like kind of the easiest part of this thing versus making sure that we've put the right things in place. I'm going to keep going. Adam, feel free to, cut me off if you want to say anything. Okay, this one is coming from a smaller independent group. So the question is, it's a great one, which is this actually realistic for us as a smaller hotel? I will kick us off and say 100%. It is, and I think that it is, in some ways, I think it's a lot easier. That you have this opportunity, single site. It's maybe a little bit more of a controlled environment. And you can, once you get that system in place, you're able to actually really deeply understand what's going on. For you to take and make changes from there should be a lot easier for you. Adam, I saw you wanted to jump in on that one.
Yeah, first of all, I totally agree. I think it's absolutely realistic for independent properties, and in some ways also more realistic in some cases. And I think one good example I could just give you is, and I touched on it earlier, the time saving topic. In an independent property, it's far more likely that one person is spending more time away replying to reviews and things like that, like I mentioned. So I feel that, like, for independent properties, bringing in solutions like ORAs that we're speaking about, making sure they're able to take a lot of that, I suppose, transferable and manual work off your hands, can again, like, let you focus on the experience you're providing to the guest and make sure that you're getting those good reviews that you can learn from going forward. So I totally agree that for independent properties, it's super relevant too.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think look, like having the team not doing all this manual work is one thing, but all the other thing is, and this was something I was asked many times when I was still working for a revenue management system. It's like, okay, I'm a small hotel. Do I really need an automated rate management system? And I always said the the risk of selling your room to the wrong price when you're a small hotel and is so much bigger than if you have a group of hotels with hundreds and hundreds of rooms. That's so different, and the mistake is there to not do it for a small hotel. So I think a small hotel should, like, this is where they definitely need to be compatible, to be compatible with the big brands and chains and groups and whatever, to have all this in place and to give the guests that are coming to you everything they actually also expect from a luxury hotel or from a branded hotel or whatsoever. So should be the experience should be even better than for the brands, because you are representing you and you can be a little bit more, you know, yourself.
I love that answer. So for whoever asked this question, if you were hoping for a cop out here and hoping for us to say, it's a little bit harder with the smaller staff or fewer team members, unfortunately, no. We think that the bar has been set high, but in a lot of ways, we think it's something you can jump right over. So feel free to reach out. We're happy to talk in more detail about how you can actually do that. All right, so with that, we're almost here at the top of the hour. I just want to thank everybody, but especially Julia and Adam for jumping on. You guys are doing incredible things with technology. Your LinkedIn and TikTok videos maybe not as incredible, but I do appreciate the effort there as well. We can't all be Meryl Streep, but no, I joke, but it was fantastic to collaborate with both of you, to think about what's changing in the guest journey and really to bring people together to let hoteliers in the world understand the guest journey of the future is here, right? We're all going to hear that at every single conference that we go to this year. It's here today, it's here today. But it really, really is, right? Like, we have the capabilities, the technology, the tools now to think about our customer differently and to take action in very different ways. And we really encourage everyone to think about how we can do that and not to think about this as being a next year budget cycle question or something that we're going to analyze and think about in our boardrooms, but maybe not take action on. So thank you guys for sharing and being so open, talking about your families and so on, and cooking styles and everything else. So really appreciate it. And yeah, any more questions, feel free to email us. You know where to find us on LinkedIn. You've all gotten emails from us in the past. We will follow up on all the other questions that we received over the course of the webinar and make sure that we answer those and reach back out to you. So really appreciate it, everyone. And thank you so much for a great session this morning.
Thank you,
Cheers,
guys.
Brett. Thanks, everybody. Cheers, Julia.
Bye.
Bye-bye.